Welcome to the start of our series on Gong Bu. Gong Bu is the second stance you typically learn in Chinese martial arts. It is one of, if not the most common one you're going to find in form practice and actual application. It is commonly translated as bow and arrow stance or archer stance. I have also seen it translated as mountain climber stance. And if you know anything about yoga, you would probably recognize it as warrior pose. Honestly, that's most likely where it comes from, at least if the stories of body armor are even, 5% true. Gong Bu is where we are going to start to break away from that 50-50 weighted stance of all of our Ma Bus and Ma Bu variations. In Ma Bu, you can see that regardless if you were in a medium frame, a small frame, or a large frame, that your weight is going to be pretty equally distributed 50-50 between each leg. Gong Bu is going to change that by placing most of our weight on our front leg. And I say most because it's not an exact number. There are a lot of exact numbers given, like 70% of your weight forward, 30% of your weight behind, or 2/3 of your weight forward and 1/3 of your weight behind. It's not quite like that. I don't expect you to buy two scales and figure out, exactly how much of your weight is in each leg. It's more important that we get the idea of shifting our weight forward and work on the structure of the legs and how we get into it. If we do that properly, then the weight distribution pretty much takes care of itself. Our basic Gong Bu and all of its variations are going to have a couple of things in common. Besides the weight distribution, the rear leg is always going to be turned out on a 45-degree angle, and your front leg is going to be pointed straight ahead-ish. And we'll get into the ish a little bit later. But for now, rear leg 45 degrees, front leg basically straight ahead. We can see here that my weight is pretty much 50-50 on this line. So I want to shift my weight forward by driving out of this rear leg. When I get to the point where my rear leg is nearly straight, but not completely, and my front knees are directly in line with my toes, not going past, but directly over those toes, then we can see that my weight is now probably in the 2/3, 70%-ish range forward on this leg, and the remainder is on the back leg. And we can see this as warrior pose for yoga stuff, or any of our martial type poses. To properly set up a Gong Bu, we need to, as with most things in Chinese martial arts, start with a really good Ma Bu. What I'm going to do is I am going to get into a medium frame Gong Bu, because that's where we like to start working on this channel. I'm setting my width for a medium frame. Then I'm going to take my toes, I'm going to open them out nice and wide as I can get them for a very open Ma Bu, making sure I'm sunk down. And I want to get into those same sort of Ma Bu energetic connections that we covered in a previous video. So toes gripping, making sure I'm driving into each leg equally, pulling up with the heels, creating that nice strong structure. From here, what I want to do is, if I am turning this direction. I'm going to move my body, my torso is going to rotate at the hips 90 degrees. And to do that, to power it, I'm going to take my opposite leg, and specifically my opposite heel, and I'm going to drive it in that direction. So for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Take this heel, drive it there, turn my body this way. And if I drive that heel out, letting my body rotate and push forward, straightening this rear leg and having this knee come over the toe, we can see again, my weight has shifted. I'm now 70%, 2/3. Most of my weight is forward. Some of my weight is in behind. To reverse this, I simply pull in this heel, rotating, pivoting on the balls of the feet till I'm back in my strong open Ma Bu. Turn the other direction. I drive this heel. And that puts me facing 90 degrees to this side. So a couple of characteristics that I want to point out that I need to do from the side because you will not be able to see it from that angle. What that means I'm going to do is I am going to use my feet to straddle this line pointed towards the camera, where I'm going to put my heel on one side of the painter's tape and the balls of my feet on the other side. And I'm going to move that in a little bit. And then my other foot, I'm going to do the same, getting myself into a nice Ma Bu width. From here, I open out my toes, nice and wide, and that line is just not quite long enough. Hopefully there you will see that now my toes are more or less pointed this, well, maybe about that direction. So not quite straight ahead, but my body is still going to rotate 90 degrees when I drive out this rear heel. So I drive out that rear heel and my body turns 90 degrees. This leg here, my front leg that is holding most of my weight, the toes are still slightly in and the knee is still slightly in, and it's providing cover for this area here. I don't want to open this up and invite attack. This gets covered. The next thing I'd like you to hopefully spot is if I am in my Ma Bu here and you can see that I have a very narrow sort of profile front and back. As I drive out my rear hip and I rotate my body around to get into a nice strong Gong Bu, I haven't really changed my width all that much. This is a very narrow stance. My heels are still basically on a line and I'm driving straight through. I'm very strong front to back, but I don't have nearly as much sort of stability side to side, which if you're on a Chinese battlefield a couple of thousand years ago and you got buddies next to you, doesn't matter so much. This is great. Very strong front and back, very narrow profile. Jab the other guy with the pointy stick. Hopefully he doesn't hit you. Maybe he hits your buddy instead. So switching from a Ma Bu into a Gong Bu, I maintain a very narrow profile. That is our basic Gong Bu that we're going to be using on this channel. The basic way of getting into it and the way we are going to be setting up our structure for all the future variations that we will get into. Thank you very much for joining me on this basic Gong Bu introduction.